All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Malzberg panel, and joining us on the panel is Ph.D. Dr. Tom Borelli, contributor for Conservative Review, and Jane Velez-Mitchell, founder of JaneUnchained.com, and New York Times bestselling author of Addict Nation, an Intervention for America. All right, let me start with this, ladies and gentlemen, and that is that Barack Obama in Cuba. And I want to put up a picture before we get to what was said at the presser afterward with Castro and Obama. Someone tweeted this out and to the heading of "comfortably smug." It's Jane. It's Barack Obama standing in front with a bunch of other people, standing at attention in front of a building that has, I don't know, painted on it, drawn on it, whatever. I mean, it's a huge caricature or drawing of Che Guevara. Of course, the right hand of strongman Fidel Castro and communist icon. A lot of people say that this trip was a mistake, and when he landed, almost immediately, the Cuban government arrested dissidents. There was one incident in particular, the Ladies in White. They're a group of dissidents known as the Ladies in White, and they were outside Havana's Santa Rita Church. And they were overwhelmed by a crowd of Castro loyalists shouting insults at them. The secret police then came and dragged these women off to be arrested. So, Jane, I mean, how can a president of the United States stand for this?
Look, I'm no fan of the Castro regime. It's horrible. It's oppressive. It's got to go. But we've been trying one thing for decades. Let's try something new. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Only a tiny fraction of the Cuban people have global internet access. The Obama administration is trying to give all the Cuban people global internet access. When that happens, that regime will crumble from within because they will see the truth.
All right. Well, Tom, I'm sure you disagree with that.
Yeah, well, what Obama's foreign policy is, he legitimizes evil. First it was Iran, now it's Castro. And to your point with that picture, a picture's worth 1,000 words. They're going to use it, the Cubans use it for propaganda. That's their version of Mount Rushmore of communists, and now President Obama's face is right in the middle.
Well, look, Tom, yeah. we deal with China. We have an embassy in China. They're an oppressive regime. I'm sure that some of the things that you're wearing or you own in your home are from China. So by that standard, we shouldn't buy anything from China, and we shouldn't have any relations with China.
We should care about human rights in China, though. You have to admit that. But they buy so much of our debt, we're addicted to them. We need to send them a message, too, especially as they expand all through the South.
I want to point out to you both, and Jane, you could weigh in on this first. 526 political dissidents detained in the first 2 weeks of this month leading up to Obama's trip. At the press conference after their meeting today, Castro actually stood there. He was asked. They actually took questions, which they didn't plan on doing, I guess. And someone asked Castro about political dissidents, and he said, "Who? Give me names. Tell me who they are. Give me a name. Tell me where they are. I'll release them by tonight. Tell me who these dissidents are."
The Castros are scum. They need to go. They're in their 80s. They're elderly. We are at the tipping point. The question is, how do we get them to go? Now, you say, oh, it's horrible that Obama's negotiating with them and negotiating with Iran. If we hadn't made the Iran deal, they would have a nuclear warhead by now because they were that close.
Jane, a picture's worth 1,000 words. He's legitimizing this communist propaganda. They're going to use this just like Iran is using all the deals for their propaganda. We're being a tool, and people should fear us, not use us as a propaganda tool.
By the way, he also stood next to Obama and demanded that we give Guantanamo back to Cuba and that we lift the embargo. And Obama says, oh, the embargo will be lifted. I just don't know when. But don't you worry, sir. Don't you worry, Mr. Castro. What else can I do for you, Mr. Castro?
They're 90 miles away. If we get trade going, if we get open communication, they will crumble from within. It's just a question of getting the information to the people, and you don't do that by just being isolationist. We've got to engage. They will crumble.
When you deal with evil, evil wins.
We'll be back with more of the panel. Don't go away.
It's far too late. I think this is a it's somewhat, some folks find it to be interesting, and that's great, but it isn't likely, and it's probably too late. And there is no definitive answer right now as to who the nominee is going to be of our party. So I think all of it's far too early.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of the RNC saying that not necessarily will the nominee be one of the three candidates that we currently have. That's not too encouraging. More on that in a second, but I want to remind you all to tune in tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. Of course, tune in at 7 p.m. Eastern for my show, and then right after we'll begin our coverage of America Votes, Newsmax TV's special coverage of the primaries in Arizona, Utah, and Idaho. I'll be joined by my colleague J.D. Hayworth, along with Dick Morris, Michael Reagan, and the best political analysis around. That's tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern, only on Newsmax Television. And rejoining us on the panel, Tom Borelli and Jane Velez-Mitchell. And Tom, Donald Trump today announcing some foreign policy advisors, meeting with Republicans in Washington, D.C., speaking to AIPAC. But I want to take it to what you heard from the RNC chair, and a lot more of that coming up on Gimme 5. He was non-committal about it being an open convention. He was non-committal about the nominee eventually being one of the three, Trump, Cruz, or Kasich. It sounds like he's setting the stage.
Well, he very well could be, but again, this is all really in Mr. Trump's hands now. I mean, there's still a way to go. He has half the delegates. If he nails it down before the convention in Cleveland, this is all a moot point. So Mr. Trump's got to do what he's got to do. He's got to get out there, get votes, and over the weekend, one of his campaign people really hammer away at the immigration problem, at the trade problem. These are the core issues that a lot of Americans are concerned about.
What about it, Jane?
I think sane members of the Republican Party are terrified. The Economist, a globally renowned publication, has labeled a Trump presidency a global risk factor on a level with jihadist terrorism that could destabilize the world economy. I'm not making this up. This is the Economist. I mean, this man is a crass vulgarian. He changes his positions, if he even has positions, from day to day. And I think a lot of people are absolutely terrified, and they're looking for a way out. I think it's going to be a crazy convention, a brokered convention, unless he wraps it up in the next few days.
Well, I don't know if you can't do it in the next few days. You have primaries that come up a couple of months from now in New York and California and elsewhere. Right. One of the strategies being spearheaded by the likes of Bill Kristol, who will be on this show tomorrow, we have him on every week, is a third-party alternative, or a third candidate, if you will, if Trump does get the nomination. And one of the candidates that we've heard bandied about is Governor Rick Perry or Tom Coburn, Senator. And Perry said, I ain't today. He said, I'm not doing it, Tom. I don't want this thing. A third-party candidate will hand the nomination to the most dangerous woman, politically speaking, on the face of the earth, the threat to my son's future and your son's future and our grandkids, who will take this Supreme Court so far to the left you won't recognize the United States of America.
You're absolutely right, Steve, and that's why at the end of the day, all Republicans have to unite, whoever the candidate is, because the worst thing that could happen to the United States is another 4 years of a progressive. Mrs. Clinton already wants to end whatever's left of the coal mining industry. She's going after fracking, the only industry that's really growing these days other than technology. She would be a complete disaster. And, this third-party idea would destroy the Republican Party. It's already on the ropes, but that would just carry it over the edge.
We have the lowest unemployment in 8 years.
Labor participation rate, Jane.
Over-fracking has caused a problem for our economy because oil dropping has created a whole bunch of economic
low
problems
energy prices for low-income Americans.
Right now, if we had just switched to clean energy, we would.
You can't run your car on solar panel, Jane.
If GM hadn't killed the electric car in the 90s, we wouldn't have to even worry about
the electric cars killed themselves. Nobody wants them.
The windmills kill birds. The roofs, the solar makes it impossible for excuse me, makes it impossible. Jane, I'm talking. Makes it. Could you bring it down? Bring it down. Bring it down. Makes it impossible for firefighters to get on roofs, and birds fly into these roofs thinking that it's water. So, I mean, for environmentalists, if this was a little earthworm, they would stop water from getting to a major farm. But they don't care about dead birds all over the place from windmills and solar panels. Very quickly, Jane, the Obama administration, the most transparent ever in our history, has denied a record 77% of FOIA requests. How does that work?
Well, I think that's terrible. I think that FOIA requests, and I say this as a person who has fought on behalf of climate change and animal rights and sought FOIA requests to find out why the government is doing ridiculous experiments on animals at taxpayer expense.
All right.
Those requests are very important.
All right. Now, Tom, final word.
Listen,
Final word.
Hillary Clinton had the solution for that. Set up your own server, so therefore you can't get FOIA requests.
Good way to end. Tom Borelli, Jane Velez-Mitchell, thank you both very much. Up next, senior political analyst with the Washington Examiner, Michael Barone, and he'll try to answer the question, can Donald Trump get to 1, 2, 3, 7? Don't go away.